What down with the YouTube? It's Marty 2 Major, and I'm back with another reaction video. Today we gonna be reacting to 10 most evil people in history that you probably didn't know exist. You hear me? So I want y'all to sit back and y'all go watch it with me. Let's go.
Kind of ruthlessness to take this kind of action, to take the law into one's own hands.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at some of the most insidious people in history whose crimes have been relatively overlooked until now.
No one knows for sure what creates a man like Gilles, but there are plenty of possibilities.
Fritz Haarmann. Known to many as the Wolfman, Fritz Haarmann terrorized the citizens of Hanover, Germany between 1918 and 1924. He targeted male youths, strangling them and biting into their Adam's apple. His feral spree continued on until remains were discovered in 1924. Haarmann was found guilty of 24 murders, although the actual number is thought to be higher, and was sentenced to death. While infamous at the time, both he and his dark legacy have been lost to time, although his head was preserved for years at a medical school.
Wer weiß denn, wie sie mir aussieht, wie es schreit und brüllt da innen, wie ich tun muss, will nicht, muss, will nicht!
Elizabeth Bathory.
Do you happen to remember her name?
The Countess Elizabeth Bathory.
But that's my name, you must be joking.
Though her guilt is now contested by many, her influence on horror certainly isn't. A noblewoman in 16th and 17th century Hungary, Bathory had a grotesque reputation. For 20 years, beginning in 1590, she allegedly tortured and killed hundreds, supposedly often bathing in their blood to prolong her own youth.
In a macabre prologue to the fictitious Count Dracula from nearby Transylvania, the Countess drank her victim's blood.
By the time she and her accomplices were caught, over 300 people had come forward claiming to have seen proof of her violence. While she served as an inspiration for writers and artists throughout history, her actual life has taken a back seat to the rumors created about her. However, the accusations surrounding her have been questioned by some historians.
She was just carrying out...
Hey, now let's keep it real. We heard people that drink their own blood, but when you start drinking other people's blood and shit, you hear me? You got some other stuff to be worried about. Like, come on now. You drinking blood. I want to, hey, if y'all get if she's still living, if y'all get a contact in her, y'all see about that. Y'all see about that.
And inflicting these horrendous injuries out of pleasure.
Daria Nikolaevna Saltykova. Bathory is known as the Bloody Countess, but she isn't the only one who deserves that title. On the surface, Daria Nikolaevna Saltykova appeared to simply be a Russian woman of nobility. However, beneath the luxurious veneer lay something much darker. Throughout her reign in the 1700s, she was behind the torture and deaths of at least 36 serfs. The victims were often beaten to death, and if anyone came forward, they were likely to be punished. Her brutality was allowed to continue until 1762, when Catherine the Great finally had her publicly tried and imprisoned for life. Despite the extent of her crimes, she remains primarily known in Russia and is essentially unknown to the rest of the world. Yang Xinhai. In just 4 years, he became one of the most prolific serial killers of the 21st century, with 67 confessed murders. From 1999 to 2003, Yang Xinhai traveled across China, leaving a trail of carnage in his wake.
我们永远不能再见面了。我曾经许诺过你，只有死亡能把我们分开。可惜我食言了。也许早一点遇到你，一切都会不一样。 你说闭上眼睛就可以忘记现实。
He would arrive at a village and break into his victims' homes, killing those inside before fleeing. His bloodlust soon earned him the moniker Monster Killer. He was eventually detained during a routine investigation in 2003, where his depraved actions were eventually found out. His crimes are akin to those committed by infamous American murderers, but unlike them, his homicides have been largely ignored by the Western media, causing them to fall by the wayside. Belle Gunness.
Belle's treachery.
Then look, he think he sleep on the eaves in people's houses and shit. You not slick enough. You gotta be smarter, faster. You hear me? You supposed to be jumping through windows. You coming through doors. Like,
would go much further. It would rank among the most grisly crimes in Indiana's history.
Gunnis is credited with killing at least 14 people before dying, or perhaps faking her own death to avoid exposure. After a fire at her farm in 1908, the bodies of her 3 children and also a headless woman who may have been Gunnis were found. However, there were significant physical differences between the woman's body and Gunnis. The aftermath of the fire uncovered a deep rabbit hole of carefully concealed slayings that had taken place across several years.
Belle Gunnis allegedly lured men to her LaPorte farm via newspaper ads. They were never heard from again.
Many of her victims were her husbands or men lured to her home as potential husbands. Her likely victims list also includes several infants, proving that her cruelty knew no bounds.
Number 9, Harry Robinson.
Javed Iqbal. Discovering a crime firsthand is traumatic on its own, but having the details laid out can be just as stomach-churning. In 1999, officials in Pakistan received a confession from Javed Iqbal, admitting to the sexual assault and murder of 100 underage males. He included lurid details and even left evidence behind, proving how meticulously he'd planned everything. His motive? His mother died from a heart attack following another violation he'd committed, making him want to bring 100 mothers to tears as well. A film about him and his misdeeds was finally approved for release in 2023, but even that hasn't stopped him from remaining unknown to the greater population. Gilles de Rais.
These are terrible crimes. Would we classify him as a psychopath today?
The FBI and the specialists say yes. Serial killer, organized psychopath.
His association with both the 100 Years' War and Joan of Arc both are not enough to conceal the dark legacy he left behind. Though Gilles de Rais left an indelible mark on the battlefield, his true impact lies within his personal life. Beginning in the 1430s, he began to slip into darker interests, from attempting to summon demons to murder. He was finally able to stand trial in 1440, where he was found guilty of slaying 140 youths before meeting his own death by hanging.
Gilles could kill kids at will. But it was only when he offended the church that he was investigated and his hideous crimes uncovered.
De Rais' service to the French army in no way compensates for his later depraved activities.
Jeanne, that is not 10,000 reinforcements! That is...
I could have said something, but I just let the video play because y'all will see it for itself. I think girls said about 140 bodies. I don't know, but like...
100 very loyal but very tight soldiers!
Delphine Lalaurie.
The only word that comes to mind is a sadist. A sadist derives pleasure from inflicting pain on another individual.
You may recognize the name thanks to Kathy Bates' interpretation of her in American Horror Story, but even that only scratched the surface of her wicked atrocities. Following her third marriage in 1825, Delphine Lalaurie began to act on some of her darker desires.
Should I run and find a doctor?
No, I can handle this. You go on downstairs and cook up that chicken.
Deep within her New Orleans home, she had a room dedicated to the torture of those she enslaved. Her cruelty was extreme even for the time period, with the law even stepping in to free 9 people from her hold. Despite her open secret, it wasn't until a disastrous fire in 1834 that several battered enslaved people were discovered. Though elements of her depravity have been showcased, the true extent of her hatred remains unknown.
A lot of people died at that house, and it's, theorized that it was at the hands of Madame Lalaurie.
Ilse Koch.
Ilse wasn't content with the daily physical and mental abuse she dished out to prisoners. Her bullying took a much darker twist.
You don't get a nickname like the Witch of Buchenwald without earning it. Though she often goes unnoticed among some of the more prominent names within the Nazi Party, she is remembered for her sheer cruelty. She was heavily entrenched within the hateful movement, even getting married at a concentration camp. She had no qualms about violence, ranging from assault to aiding in the beatings carried out by soldiers. She was even accused of targeting prisoners with tattoos, supposedly so she could fashion macabre lampshades.
Ilse used this...
Huh? They don't even make sense.
...study to create one of the most enduring and revolting works of the Third Reich. She began using prisoners' skin to make lampshades and book covers.
She was eventually convicted and imprisoned before
She one of those.
taking her own life in 1967. While she isn't as notorious, she is proof that even non-officials were swept up in the hatred of the time period. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our perpetrators managed to evade both legal and cultural consequences. Shiro Ishii was one of the masterminds and main directors of Unit 731, which used human beings as guinea pigs in the development of biological and chemical weapons.
何らかの形の実験的なものにしろ細菌戦をやったというのは事実ではないかというふうに私は思っています。
His vile experiments, using everything from plagues to sexually transmitted diseases, constitute some of the worst war crimes of the period. Following the end of the war, he and his team were given immunity by the United States in exchange for their research. His lack of punishment has meant that few have heard of his name.
To collect accurate data, we're dependent on continuous experimentation. So all the Maruta that we use, not only do they have to be alive, but they have to be fit and in good general condition.
Which villainous historical figure are you surprised doesn't get talked about more? Let us know in the comments below. Check out these other...
I'm surprised by all of them. So old girl say she chopped her, wait, hold up. Dude say she chopped her opponent's head off and a body off and put that bitch on a book cover. She out her shit. She thugging, y'all. I don't know what to tell her. I don't know what to tell y'all, but we go check out. It's Marty Too Major and I'm gone.